Hello.
Hello.
Good morning or no, afternoon. It's just afternoon for us though,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
like 11 minutes, so I was really close.
Yeah.
Um, so hello, friend.
Hello. Welcome to this week's episode.
Welcome to this week's episode. We wanted to start by just addressing our absence because we've really missed this and you guys. Um, And it's not the first time that we've had an absence or, had to address it, but, we're going to make a real effort in earnest to get back to this regularly because we miss you guys. And this is important to us.
Very.
But for context, life, right? And I think that both Kelley and I wanted to be transparent about, some of the things that have happened over the last year, not because it needs a ton of time or attention, but just so that, there's clarification because we love some good clarification.
We do.
Yeah. So, yeah, off with the Band-Aid, right? First, Kelley's Kelley's dad passed away.
Right.
And then my dad passed away a couple months later. And yeah, and we are both of the mind that ultimately we have to put our own oxygen masks on before we can help anyone else, and we needed to step back from this to do just that. And
Yes.
yeah,
And sometimes life just comes at you really hard and fast. And
yeah,
this is our advocacy, and we also have our own practices, and we have children. And so
yes, we do.
oftentimes this is the thing that's neglected because we have to prioritize people who are deeply dependent on us.
Yep, it's true. And
Yep.
big and yay DBT.
Mhm.
And we care about this so much, like I
So
said.
much.
And so here we are.
Those are the two major things. There's been lots of other blips.
So
My
many
mom
blips.
was injured,
Yeah. My
childhood
mom
had
was injured.
surgery.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah, your
yep.
child had surgery. Yeah, child, there's just
It's endless, but we're here. We
but
made
we're
it,
here.
and we're here for you guys.
Yeah. And we're glad to be back to finish out POCD, which I think has actually been the longest, most dragged out of all of the subtype triplets that we've done thus far. I
Yeah.
looked at this morning as like 11 months ago we started this journey, and here we are. So
Wow.
yeah. So, but talking about recovery in the context of POCD
Yeah.
today, and yeah, would you like to start us off?
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah,
So, I wish I would have reviewed the second one, but,
same.
part 3, we're gonna talk about exposures essentially and what we would typically do, like the bread and butter exposures of POCD.
Yeah.
Um, and so going back to last episode, we talked about, compulsions, right, related to this. I really like to have, like, this perfect,
Hmm.
like, "Oh, these are the compulsions we talked about," and then I'm just noticing my perfectionism coming up, so
I
it's
so
interesting.
yeah, look at that.
Yeah. It's like, "Oh, you need the exact example you talked about," but anyways, we don't.
We don't, and it's gonna probably be redundant as a result, and there
Yeah.
you go. Again, we're doing our best. But let's say if somebody's core fear is that they're going to harm a child and they're never gonna be able to forgive themselves, they're specifically afraid of, harming someone, like a friend's child unknowingly.
Yeah. Like, what if I sexually assault them just by looking at them?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a vast variety of different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I to that end, it's kind of a I don't know that this is necessarily something that we brought up in future episodes, but this idea of like degrees of like I could cause harm by doing something like looking at a child and having a thought, even though I don't actually do anything. It's a fair point to bring up as well in terms of the spectrum of different obsessions one might have.
Yeah, yeah. I looked at them too long, or I looked at their crotch, or I looked at My friend sent me a photo of their baby in the bath, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And why did I look, right? Like,
yeah, what's wrong with me?
what's wrong with me? And so if let's say we were doing exposure
Yeah.
for like work with somebody who had these particular obsessions, where would you start?
Well, likely with a hierarchy.
Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Agreed. So,
Um, we might do a few things and the reason why I say hierarchy is because something that is somebody's 10 might be somebody's 1. But just to throw out some of these would be maybe looking at an image of that child and sitting with the discomfort that comes with that. And then the response prevention is ultimately not mentally ruminating over why, what it means, right? It's the judgment that's the issue.
yep.
So we might have them look at photos
Mhm.
with the absence of compulsing. We may have them go to playgrounds,
Yep.
drive by schools,
Yep.
hold the child.
Yes, as generally, I mean, obviously to your point that everyone's hierarchy is different and what's a 10 for one person may be a 5 for another and a 4 for another and a 7 for another. So, but generally speaking, the more the progression often is intensified by close personal contact with a
Oh, yeah.
child as opposed to initially. Even one of the ways that we can sort of grade the exposure is to start with pictures of children that you don't know, right?
Yep.
So if you go on Google and you Google children's clothing or images of children's clothing, that you are able to then look at a child that is not your French child in this case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Or going, yeah, on social media, what have you.
Yeah.
Um, and then like the further degree of that, like the more extreme exposure could be something like holding the child on your lap while listening to an audio of on loop of like, oh, I'm attracted to a child. Oh, um,
Yep.
etc.
I could hurt this child. I may be a bad person. Those sorts of the
Yeah.
fears, right? The things that people are trying to ensure aren't true or don't come to pass. That we want those thoughts coming up so that we learn how to deal with them without responding through compulsions. Um, and so to Kelly's point, like not trying to check your physical sensations and determine, like analyzing what you felt and what it means about you that you felt that and all of those things, that it's just, I don't know. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on. Right now I'm just sitting here with this child, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That I care
And
about.
that I
And
care about. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that that's an important point too, is that usually, as Kelley and I talk about a lot, we're going toward value-based exposures or things that are inherently meaningful to you. I'm not suggesting that you just randomly go up to a kid and be like, "Hey, come sit on my lap." Like that's
No, no, no.
strange on so many levels. But I do think that if you have a kid is in this case that you really care about, who your fears are actually interfering with your ability to connect with, we want to ultimately move toward that exposure.
Yes. And I trust that in previous episodes around pedophilia OCD that we talked about the shame that's highly connected to this subtype. And so often a lot of the groundwork that has to be laid, if you will, for this subtype is a lot of self-compassion, a lot of psychoeducation,
Yeah.
and really walking through like thoughts are thoughts, right? And the context is irrelevant or the content is irrelevant, and that it attacks the things we love the most. And oftentimes, I don't know for you, but I've treated a lot of POCD related to people who are teachers,
Mm.
nurses, people who are like
Parents.
very much want to be parents, right? And even a compulsion would be, I don't want to have a child because what if I have these thoughts?
Yeah.
Even folks who don't have that as a content, it's something else. And I'm treating them for that, but they plan on having children and they're saying, oh, what if my OCD jumps on that, right?
Yeah. Totally. Totally. There's so much fear around this particular subtype just because of, yeah, how deeply upsetting the content is and
Yeah.
on a lot of levels. And um, yeah.
It could be even just like changing your baby's diaper, right? Bathing them.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's, I think so many people do avoid
Yeah.
having, like with this
Huge
subtype
avoidance.
of a ton of avoidance because of the fact that they're especially even just having a child because they don't want to be triggered in that way, and they certainly of course want to make sure their child is safe. And if you think that you're possibly like this huge liability to your child, your potential future child, then you might be very reticent to move forward in having a kid. But I've also seen parents who do, right? Like they have kids and then they're like, oh my gosh, well, and it makes sense, right? Because what an odd experience to have that you're like, you have
Yeah.
this little person who is completely vulnerable and
Yeah.
dependent upon you. And you're in these situations that you don't find yourself in with any other human being on planet Earth, right? Like you're
Yeah.
not sitting around like, I'm going to bathe this human or I'm going to like, change this. Like, I mean, you may change, like, let's say,
Like a
you
niece
are
or
a
nephew,
caretaker, well, or you're a
a
caretaker for like an
babysitter.
older adult or something, you might, but
Yeah.
like it's not as common in other contexts.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a challenge. But again, under the heading of value space, we want to get people back into this. And so if we're working with somebody who has a kid who's avoiding changing diapers or giving baths or, like doing the things that they need to do to support their child, then we're going to hopefully incrementally work back toward that. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some other exposures.
Like some
Uh,
specific exposures.
yeah, so,
Oh,
yep,
I would say like looking at movies too,
yep,
or and any sort of film that's about or has a main character that is engaged in pedophilic behavior. Um, which, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of them because I think,
yeah, a
yeah,
lot of,
yeah.
crime stuff around that for
Yeah,
sure.
and certainly TV shows like Law& and Order SVU, like, have been going on for season upon season and have lots of potential exposure possibilities.
Yeah, also just thinking and reflecting on past, uh, clients and doing exposures, a lot of people are averse to going down, like, the baby aisle at the store, even
Yep.
touching it, right? Like, what if I somehow contaminate these baby wipes,
Mm,
just by looking at them or touching them, right? There can be the magical thinking involved at times.
totally. Yep, and I think actually to that end, the false memory stuff can be really tricky with
Oh,
POCD, and if you're walking down a kids aisle or a baby aisle at a store, that you might have thoughts like, "Oh, I saw that kid. Did I touch that kid while I saw
right.
them? Like,
The
what
hands are a big one. Let
Yes.
me put my hands in the pocket. That's almost I see that a lot.
Yes, and so understanding that that compulsion is one that you would want to do away with during exposure work, and not, it doesn't have to all be at once, but that, maybe you start by
Fling your
walking,
arms. Yeah.
yeah, start by walking down the aisle, like second you walk down the aisle with your hands out of your pockets and,
Right.
so on and so forth.
You were talking about surgeon hand was it you who was talking about surgeon hands?
No,
Oh, somebody said that. I
I
don't know
don't think it
where I
was me.
got it.
I like that though.
It's
Yeah,
so true though, like, we're talking about in the in context of contamination of, like, I have to make sure that my hands are not touching anything. I think that this applies in this content as well.
absolutely. I totally agree. So wanting to monitor that at all times, and then if you don't have a strong biographical memory or autobiographical memory of your hands being in your pockets, right? Then there's an increased possibility in your mind, that something could happen.
Right.
So also, yeah, I think reading about pedophiles, right? I think again, just because of, yeah, and there's another thing that I do want to normalize is that oftentimes people are troubled by the fact that they find these things to be fascinating, much in the way that watching a film
Serial
about a
killers.
serial killer for somebody with harm OCD can be quite triggering, because it's like, wow, like, how did this person do this thing? There is something just mind-boggling, and that
About
we,
abnormal psychology is
yeah, yeah,
basically. Yeah.
exactly. And so understanding that if you were to, let's say, read about a pedophile or watch a documentary about a pedophile, that there may be this intrigue that comes with it of like, wow, what? And I think oftentimes that can be quite triggering, and just making space for not knowing why is it intriguing to me? Does that mean something about me? We're like, not answering that question. Like,
Yeah, the mental compulsions are very real, um, and challenging just so challenging to acknowledge their have the awareness and then redirecting and refocusing, which we'll put a pin in that and come back at the end perhaps
Oh,
to
okay.
do um, but I do wanna also touch on the fact that it's not always around babies or infants or
No.
even small children, it can be around, like, the teens, right?
Hmm.
Oh, how like, really trying to figure out, is that person 18? 'Cause
Right.
somehow magically that's the legal age of adulthood in this country.
Right.
It's like,
Which of
"Oh."
course it
Yeah.
is, but
Yeah.
it's like the idea that attraction, like, kind
Is
of,
only appropriate if
right.
right. It's like,
And
well, breasts exist, and there's sometimes arousal with breasts, and
right.
it's not that you want to do anything, it's just you're getting triggered and aroused, and
Right.
that's it. That's like, let's just not analyze.
Why, yeah, why? And I think one thing that is really, I think it's key to the work that we do, is recognizing that thoughts and behaviors are wholly different beasts, right? And
Mhm.
so while you're doing exposure work, that recognizing that, like, there has to be sort of a fundamental agreement that you can have any thought, but what we're looking at is behaviorally, what are you doing? Right? Because
Yeah,
you can
both
have,
mentally and physically.
that is absolutely true. Exactly. B- but I think also delineating from the vantage point of like, oh, it's not okay to have this thought about this, you know, teenage person that seems like they're somewhat where around the 18-year mark. It's not okay to have that thought. Well, is it okay? I guess it brings up the question, which again, I think it's a premise of our work, is like, it's got to be okay to have any thought,
Any thought, you're right.
right? Including like, oh, I think that person's attractive, or a feeling of attraction. It's not in our control. The only thing that's relevant is, are you engaged in behaviors that are, like, obviously engaging in behaviors that are illegal? We want, we don't want to be doing that. So, or that are immoral, or any of those things. Um,
Right.
so I guess it behooves us to say too that in no way, as you're doing exposures, are we trying to push you to, do things that are outside of your morals. In fact, quite the contrary, we're trying to get you closer to living a life that's fuller, richer, and more aligned with who you want to be.
Yeah.
I often see this too, and I imagine you probably do as well. Like, when people are like, when we talk about maybe going to the park as an in vivo exposure, that people are like, well, is that bad? I'm like, using that child for my, exposure homework, that there's some moral
Yeah.
scrupulosity that comes up around, like, maybe that in and of itself is bad. I'm curious, do you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. And also, again, going back to this theme being so shame heavy of like, well, why me? Like, why is my OCD on this? This must mean something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is something bigger because
Yeah.
the average person doesn't have these thoughts. Well, actually, they do.
Right.
They have them all the time. They just go, "Oh,
That's weird.
that's cool. That's, an interesting thought. Moving on."
Yeah.
But somebody with OCD is like, "Well, I had that thought. What does that mean? Now I'm fixated on it? What does that mean about me as a person?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but I think making space for all of those thoughts and
Yes.
recognizing that, you're not actually, I like under the heading of like going to a park and just being in the vicinity of children, you're not harming a child by being in a park,
Right.
right? Like, and
Let's
having thoughts. It's not,
yeah, let's definitely have a definition of like actual harming is the behavior like you're talking about
yeah, absolutely.
acting on,
Yeah.
which then that's not OCD.
No, no, no. So, well, what else? What else do we want to talk about? I mean, imaginal exposures, perhaps. I know we kind of briefly touched upon those when you were discussing, like, that higher level exposure where you're sitting with the child, like on your lap and you're, maybe listening to a script. Um, but I think that what we've talked about historically too is that imaginal exposures themselves can be graded, and even words, so writing words or listening to words, and then
Yep.
phrases, and maybe posting phrases, or if you're embarrassed about or ashamed of the content, right? Like, you don't need to post the phrase per se, but just put up a blank post-it as a reminder. Like, I always think of John Grayson has that Obsessing About Obsessing article where he talks about putting little dots on things, just a
Yeah, I
reminder, like,
use that. Yeah.
yeah, you might have an obsession, don't forget.
Yeah. Yep.
So calling a triggering thought to mind on purpose so that you can get better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And going back to this idea that everybody's OCD is so different, even if the content is labeled POCD. It's like some people don't do those exposures. Some people do entirely different ones, or, it's just everybody's just so different. So if you hear us talking about certain exposures and you're like, oh, I think I'm in recovery, but my therapist didn't have me do that. Like, let's not go down that road either.
Yeah. And you don't have to do every single exposure. And this is the thing about manufactured exposures in general versus
Mhm.
the more
In the moment.
functional,
Yeah.
value-based exposures, is that it's much more important that you get back to living your life, especially through the lens that we view ERP work, which is heavily informed by things like mindfulness and acceptance and commitment therapy, that it's more about learning how to have the feelings than it is about doing exposures over and over and over again so you can stop feeling a certain way. And
Mm.
so,
Good clarification on that.
thanks. I love some good clarification,
Yeah.
but I think that essentially understanding that if you're like, oh, I didn't do that exposure, maybe my recovery is incomplete, that like we don't need to do exposure to every single thing
No.
in order to be in recovery. I'm sure that there are exposures related to themes that I haven't done, like, very sure. And not because
Yeah.
I'm avoiding them, but because, like, I'm thinking of all of the small times where I've had a theme for like 5 minutes and then I just sort of go, "Okay, I'm not gonna figure that out," right? I didn't need to go through and do all of the exposure work, because that muscle was strong enough to just be like, "Nope, not doing that," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Good
yeah.
point.
Yeah. There's a quote actually, if I may. Did you have
Anyway.
something to add? Well, because I have to look up this quote.
I did, and then it just vanished from my brain, which is fun.
I love it when things vanish from my brain. It happens all the time.
Yeah, I would just say, going back to the extreme of an exposure, like everyone responds differently. Like even in imaginal, some people have zero, like they are just like, this does not even do any, like I feel nothing. Not that that we need anxiety to say that this is helping us in an exposure.
No, but that is a
However,
fear sometimes for people,
yeah,
like, "This isn't making me anxious. Is it going to work?" And it's like,
right. It's just, well, no, let's just do a different exposure.
well, let's do a different exposure, and it's all about willingness too.
Yeah, always. And I always say that to my clients is like, it's always about willingness, right? Willingness to, okay, you were willing to read the imaginal. great. That was the exposure, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you're willing to feel so much anxiety that's what we want, right?
Right, because total willingness to have thoughts and feelings is
Is
the aim, right? That's the thing that keeps people stuck with OCD, is that they're not willing to have thoughts and feelings related to possibilities and doubt, anxiety, guilt.
yeah, and guilt too is a big one. I remembered what I was going to say.
I love it.
Okay. Is that in any OCD treatment, I don't want people to, if you've never done therapy for OCD, I don't want people to think like, oh, these therapists just come in and they're like, you're going to do this, this, and this. It's not like that.
No.
It's very collaborative in building your own exposure. It's like, if this week you're willing to do this, let's try this, right? If you're not willing, maybe we grade it out a little bit and scale it to where you're willing to do it. It's a collaborative experience.
So well said, and important, because we're not forcing anyone to do anything. This is about you getting life back on your terms and what life you want, not what life we think you should have.
Yeah. And even I start to challenge my clients near the end of treatment and ask them like, well, what do you think would be a helpful exposure? Because the
Right.
goal is not to be in therapy forever. The goal is for you to become your own therapist, to become your own coach, and to know how to actually build your own exposure when you're getting stuck.
Absolutely. And knowing that, to build on that sometimes even the mere presence of, or the input of, a therapist or some loved one can be a little bit of a form of reassurance, and learning how to navigate this realm where it's like, well, what do you think? Right? When it's like, well, was this okay? And it's like, can you make space for the fact that like you're not sure if that's the perfect exposure, or that, have it, like, is it okay that you had that thought? Well, we've already talked about guidelines in terms of whether or not it's okay to have any thought. So what's your best guess?
Yeah,
And
great.
trying to empower. I also loved that point, but I also found the quote that I
Do
was
it.
gonna. So it's a quote by Shantideva, who's a Buddhist philosopher, and it says, "How could there be enough leather to cover all the surface of the earth? But with the mere leather of the soles of one's shoes, it's as if the surface of the earth were covered." And I think it's a profound quote in the context of exposure and response prevention through that or the acceptance and commitment therapy mindfulness lens, because I think of exposure through a habituation only lens that's like focused on how do we get to a point where we don't feel these feelings when we're exposed to these triggers, that it's akin to trying to cover the whole world in leather. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's saying like, how can I ensure that I'm never finding myself in the face of triggers? But triggers are everywhere. And we know that OCD tends to hop from one theme to the next in terms of content. And so learning how to navigate a trigger without giving your life over to that trigger, without trying to resolve it to the extent that your life gets put on hold or becomes very, very small. That's the goal. Like,
Yeah.
we want to help people learn how to feel their feelings and have their thoughts and be in total acceptance of them. And again, going back to what you were saying about like, we don't need to necessarily do every exposure in order to, and if you're listening to this and thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't do that exposure, and now I'm like, maybe I did it wrong and I need to go back and redo it, that you don't need to do every exposure. You just need to learn how to be willing to do any exposure so that as they come up. Yeah.
Let's write that down and post it, because that's a great quote.
I love that quote. It's actually in my book.
Oh no, I was talking about that quote you just said.
Oh,
like, you have to just be willing. That was a good quote too, but yours was really on point. It's like you have, it's not that you have to do every exposure. It's that you have to be willing to do any exposure, right? That's it. That's the key.
As soon as you are, then you're no longer stopped at all from doing anything that matters to you. You get to live your life. Sorry. No.
Well, and recovery doesn't mean there's like this absence of intrusive thoughts. I would consider myself in recovery, and yet I get intrusive thoughts, and sometimes I get stuck and I'm not happy with it. However,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And but
I
that's
know what I have to do, right? I'm like, well, now I got to do that thing.
yep.
Cool.
Yeah. And as I think I've said probably on this podcast ad nauseum, it's like I gauge my recovery, and I think like I encourage those that I work with to gauge their recovery based on the speed at which they pivot back,
Yeah.
because we fall into the trap, all of us, regularly, and intrusive thoughts. I mean, come on, how many times a day do you have thoughts that you'd prefer not to have, right? Like, and it doesn't have to be about like pedophilia or about anything in
No, no,
particular. It's just
no.
like,
Yeah.
I don't want to. Why am I reminded of that? Like
Hmm.
that's now in this part of this perfectly lovely moment that I was having. I don't like, you know what I mean? Or I don't want to have this feeling. Um,
Right. Like everyday life, you mean? Like if we're
yeah,
like, oh, I don't want to think about the memory of my dad because it makes me sad or something, right? It's
right.
like, well,
That's
that
exactly
has nothing
right.
to do with OCD. It's just let's allow space for the feeling,
Hmm.
but know that we can't change the reality.
Exactly. And like, can the thought and the feeling be a part of this moment so that I can get back to living my life?
Right.
I was having a conversation last night with my friend's mom, who is 81, almost 82 years old. We were talking about my upcoming book, and she was sort of curious about it, and she's like, "Yeah, well, I have all of these thoughts all the time about death," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course you do. How normal is that, right?" Like, she's
Right.
like, "It's just like." It's there, it's going to happen. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense that you would have thoughts like that all the time, but like learning how to navigate those thoughts differently and be more accepting. So this is beyond just the realm of OCD. This is about like
Life.
all humans have thoughts and feelings and urges and sensations they would prefer not to have, and
Mhm.
to the extent that you can develop that willingness to have those experiences, you are free.
Yes. Let's talk more about your book because we're out of time. And
We
I think
are out of time.
the mental compulsion aspect where it's like, let's put a pin in
Yeah.
that. I wanted to hand this over to you because Lauren has a book that is out
Yeah, well,
or
not
not out, going to be out.
pre-order. Yeah, it's
Pre-order?
available
Yes.
for pre-order. I'll put it in the little description of the show in case anyone's interested. But yeah, I finished writing a book, which seems insane to say, because it is, as a matter of fact, quite an undertaking. But it's the Mental Compulsions Workbook for OCD, and it's set to officially come out January 2nd of 2026. Also, that sounds like a made up year. So I don't know about
So did 2020.
2026. Yeah, all of it's now made up. But yeah, so I'm really excited about it. And in it, I talk about all of these different subtypes that we talk about, not all of every single subtype, because that would
That's endless. It's infinite.
exactly. But
The
I do
major
talk
ones.
about some of the major ones, how how obsessions and mental compulsions show up in those
Mm.
different forms of OCD, and how to navigate them more effectively. So, like, as we've been talking about, you can get back to living your life, and I'm excited about it.
I'm very excited. I think the whole OCD community is very excited about it. There has not been one book published yet on
Yeah,
purely like mental compulsions, what they are, how we intervene.
yeah.
And so it is so needed. Thank you, Lauren,
Thank
for
you.
your service to
No, well,
us all.
wow.
That's
I
a
don't know
big
about that.
deal. That is a big deal,
Well,
like truly.
and I think there might be like onesie twosies out there, but like, yeah, there hasn't
It's
been anything
not like
like
this.
published by by New Harbinger or like a publisher. So I feel very fortunate to, and shout out also to Ben Eckstein, who because under the heading of other books that sort of fall into this category, wrote a great book called Worrying is Optional, that
Yes.
shares a lot of overlap. That's more worrying is often looked at in the context of generalized anxiety disorder, other disorders. So anyway, but this is this is specific to OCD, and my hope is that it will support a lot of people, because I know that for me, I could have used a book like it when I was going through it.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So I'll probably have to go back and read it sometimes. What did I say? Oh,
By my
right.
bed,
Ah,
along with the happiness trap I read
yeah.
every
Yeah.
couple years.
Yep,
They
for
actually
sure.
just released, the newest edition.
Did they?
Yeah, and it's,
You have it, I imagine, since you're
I
grabbing for
I
something?
do, and it's supposed to have 50% more new content.
What?
50%. So I
Well,
have to
now
yeah,
that's challenge accepted.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, guys,
anyways,
thanks all
yeah,
for being here.
thank
And as
you.
always, please feel free to reach out if you have any feedback, if you're interested in any topics that we can cover in future episodes. We are planning to meet in 2 weeks' time on October 20th, and moving forward. There is one potential hiccup that may skew things, but if it does, that's life and uncertainty, and I guess we'll have to see. But we're quite confident, for whatever it's worth, that we'll be back on October 20th and then back on November 3rd.
Yes, I will be having surgery. That's it.
Yes.
So,
So
2 surgeries this month
we
in my family. It's good, it's good.
yeah,
Getting it
yeah,
all over with.
yeah,
So it
yeah,
should work
absolutely.
out nicely. If not, we apologize, but we will be back on track
Yeah.
ASAP.
Yeah, for sure. Well, uh